when they're asking or when they're talking about your question, feel free to unmute. And if you have a follow-up, to go ahead and ask them if something isn't clear and have a conversation with them for a few minutes. Just don't make it too long, please. Okay, we just had somebody else just came on. All right. So with that, I'm going to start this. Today's session is what is our phone for this? I lost it. What are we doing today? Oh, the Broadway Inn. Yeah. Deborah Boker and James Rothman, husband and wife, have bought the old Broadway Inn. They're going to talk to us about it today and what it's like to renovate something like this and get it going and what they're trying to do with it. And this is just a side hustle for them, if you want to call it that. Deborah is an award-winning author. She's a journalist. She's an essayist, an editor, a poet. She divides her time between Colorado here in Machias. She is a regular collaborator to the national publications, including the Global Travel Magazine, and has been published in a broad variety of domestic and international media outlets. She travels extensively with a focus on Nordic and Western European countries, Israel and Thailand. She's also a member of the National Poetry Association. She's an acclaimed poetess. She is a novelist. She went to college at St. Augustine, Florida. And I'm jumping around your thing just a little bit here. She's writing novels, started several novel series now she's working on, and she studied or mentored underneath a good friend of hers, Jack D. Hunter, and he is the author of numerous best-selling novels, including The Blue Max and The Ace. And James Rossfarn is, and boy, my glasses on this. He is a telepresence coordinator and web developer at NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration and Research. His focus is on integrating telepresence 2.0 technologies and data visualization of live streaming ocean research. James has also worked for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory on video streaming and renewable projects. He was a designer for St. Austin Record Daily newspaper. He goes on and on. Like I said, they're currently rebuilding a 19th century Victorian inn in Machias called the Broadway Inn. And for those who don't know what telepresence is, it's a group of technologies that allows people who are thousands of miles away from a NOAA exploring ship to directly participate in exploration activities. In addition to providing a broad range of scientific expertise, telepresence, and also allows the public to observe and follow the expositions in real time. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, James and Debbie.
Well, thank you, Jackie. That was actually a really great introduction. And Deborah and I just want to first, thank everybody for, coming around to our little presentation and, showing an interest. We've really both been blown away by the welcome reception we've received from the people of Washington County and specifically here in Machias. we know we're out of towners, and you guys probably don't know a lot about us or our background, and we really welcome the opportunity to kind of introduce ourselves to people of the community who have been very supportive and generous and welcoming and friendly and neighborly and just incredibly awesome people to us. We can't say enough good things about how at home the people of Machias and Washington County have made us feel. Really.
I just lost. We just lost the last thing you
Oh,
said.
just that we're super grateful for how welcoming people have been to us here, and really appreciate you guys showing an interest in coming around to our presentation. We weren't sure whether there'd be greater interest in this as an entrepreneurial kind of concept, or there's more direct interest in the Broadway Inn. So we kind of have a little bit of both to chat about. And, you guys, through your questions, can try and focus us in. If you have questions about, this as more of a startup business, we're happy to answer those. Or if you have more specific Broadway Inn questions, we're happy to answer. And if you guys have information about the house going back, we definitely would welcome that. We've done as much research as we can, but we always learn things from talking to people about the house. And welcome any information that you guys can bring, or pictures or anecdotes. We've met a couple of people who used to live in the house and, have taken them, on quick walkthroughs, even though it's very much a construction zone. I'll let Deborah talk a little bit about her background. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about my background, and then we'll kind of get into the presentation. Deborah, chat for a minute?
Sure. So as you've probably gathered from everything that Jackie just said, I'm a writer, and that's pretty much what I've done. Even though I studied theater, I actually have a degree in theater, and left college and went directly to New York to let Broadway know that I was there. Turned out that Broadway didn't care that I was there, so I turned to my background in writing and have kind of pursued that ever since. Although if there's anything going on in the community that we haven't been able to access yet, if anybody has any information about theater groups or anything like that that's either going on or that other people might be interested in joining together to start up, I'd really love to hear about that. As James said, the Broadway Inn project is kind of like really near and dear to our hearts. We didn't realize it until we were gathering some information, but we kind of have a background and a personal connection with old hotels. So I was talking to Jackie earlier, and I used to work at the old Surf Hotel on Block Island during summers with my sisters. My grandparents managed an old historic Victorian hotel out there. And we would spend the summers out there working. And then James and I both went to college at Flagler College in St. Augustine, Florida, which was built by railroad magnate Henry Flagler way back when. And it was also built in the 1800s. So we kind of have this connection that we weren't really aware of to old hotels. And so the Broadway Inn is just sort of, I guess, bringing that around full circle for us. And I don't know, we just kind of fell in love. I'm going to let James tell the story about it because he actually stumbled on it while he was up. He was up in the New England area looking for property for us. We had decided that we wanted to move back to that part of the country. And he had gone on a reconnaissance mission to go and see if he could locate, land or a property that would fit our needs. We'd been doing rental property here in Colorado and decided that we really liked having guests and introducing people to the area where we lived and helping them make the most of their experience and making them feel welcome. And having an inn with more rooms where we could have that sort of experience with a larger number of people was really attractive to both of us. So, but that's just kind of a little, just a brief explanation of why we're there. I'm going to let James explain some more about that because he really is the person who found the inn, or we like to think that the inn found him and drew us there to Machias. So James, yeah, you could tell about your excursion up into the wilds of Canada.
Yeah. So how we came across the Broadway Inn is kind of an interesting story. We don't have a lot of background in down East Maine. Deborah's been here before. I had actually never been to the area before. And we did a search. We were looking for a coastal property, partially because we missed the coast. We missed the ocean. And partially because we have work on the East Coast quite a bit. And geographically, it worked into our work schedule actually quite well. So we're looking for coastal property. We started to identify areas that were available to us economically, that we could still afford to live, which, as many of you know, on the East Coast is a difficult thing to do, to find affordable property that you can actually get into and, as, average citizens really, purchase a property. We had identified actually Campbell Island originally as a place of interest. And so I journeyed out here and stayed in Machias as kind of almost coincidental. It was kind of the last place before I ventured up into Campbell Island where I thought there would be a good base of contact where I could, a nice hotel, good internet connection, places to shop. So I kind of based in Machias almost haphazardly while I was looking at properties on Campbell Island. Campbell Island turned out to be a little bit too remote for us, a little bit too far removed from services. As you guys know, you guys have been up there. It's a great place to live, but is a little bit further removed from airports, hospitals, shopping than we were really looking for. But then I was like, Machias is a really great place because I had just been staying here while I was venturing out into more remote areas looking. I was like, they've really got a lot going on here, from the fishing community to the waterfall to just a very tight-knit community that really was very appealing. So we started to refocus a little bit and came upon the Broadway Inn that had been vacant for a while, as many of you know. It was probably approaching a decade empty when we came on it. And the house really kind of approached us to some extent. And this is going to sound a bit odd, but really kind of asked us if we could give it one more shot at its glory days. And, we said we don't know whether we have the right skill set for it. I grew up in a house that was actually built in 1911 in Michigan. And I grew up watching my dad actually rebuild this house by himself. He wasn't in construction. He was an electronics guy who worked at a hospital, but had actually focused on rebuilding this house and did this amazing job. And the end product was just phenomenal. So I grew up in an atmosphere of almost continually being remodeled. The house was probably in a bit more devastated condition than the Broadway Inn was. So I had some basis, and I wasn't put off by some of the projects that actually we were faced with at the Broadway Inn. I had some context of it from where I was raised. But the Broadway Inn asked if we could give it another shot at glory. And we said, well, we will do what we can if it could be arranged. And, we made an offer on the house. But it was a fairly modest offer. And we didn't really have much expectation of purchasing the house, to be honest. And then we got the call the next day and was like, we're the owners. And I don't think there was anybody more surprised than Deborah and I that we actually ended up buying the house. But a very pleasant surprise. We were incredibly excited, but to be honest, a bit unprepared for the projects that faced us. So we started about getting our plans together and made some excursions out to the house to see what we were up against. We knew it needed a new roof. We knew it needed, a lot of interior work. And, a little bit into the side hustle part of this, we'd learned a lot from our rental in Colorado about how we wanted to set up the rental aspect of it. We knew we weren't looking at a traditional bed and breakfast. And that opinion actually has been solidified, through COVID. and some other learning experiences we've done. So the house really chose us, I think, a little bit more than we chose it. And we're grateful for that. And it's a big responsibility for us. We take the responsibility of bringing this house back into working order very seriously. We debate things like, Deborah will laugh a little bit at this, how many months we debated the siding, and how many different paradigms of siding we looked at, from just stripping it and painting it to vinyl siding to the cedar shingles that we finally ended up with. We talked to so many professionals and engineers about what's best for the house before we decided on the cedar shingles that are now going up on the exterior. And actually, we're literally ready to sign the order on the vinyl siding before some of our neighbors did cedar shingling to their house. And it just came out so incredible looking and so authentic looking. We couldn't bring ourselves to do the vinyl siding after we saw the neighbors with the cedar shingles. And so we actually found a local sustainable source, cedar shingles, had the guy come out and develop a plan with us to strengthen the house through the use of an extra large, extra thick cedar shingle that was grown in Maine, that would really be an authentic look to the house over vinyl siding. We thought about painting. We got estimates on painting that ranged from, probably, I think the low was around $14,000 up to about $30,000 to strip and paint it. And, which then ended up, well, how long will that last? Well, maybe 4 or 5 years. And just, the harsh conditions that you guys are so familiar with, the ocean air, and, how difficult it is to keep a house painted, really pointed us towards a more sustainable solution like the cedar shingles we went on with. But, we debate these issues because we want it to look like it has a place in Machias. That's a very important house. Yes, we do have some slides, and I'll jump into that. I'm kind of getting out of context a little bit. I was going to talk a little bit about Noah and my background. We want to make sure people know we're not here to flip a house. We're here to reestablish a property that has been in Machias, for so very long, and is really, we feel like, a part of Machias, and we want to do right by that and by what Machias would expect to see from the house going forward. It's very important to us. And to make sure that we don't bring something that looks like it's out of place, or a business that doesn't fit within the paradigm of Machias, is of great importance to us also.
I need to jump in here for a minute, James.
Yeah, definitely jump in.
First of all, because you've completely downplayed your own renovation skills, which I just have to say something, because you rebuilt the house that we live in Colorado. You rebuilt it from the ground up and did an amazing, amazing job. And you make incredible, beautiful furniture. So your woodworking skills are not to be overlooked. And I think that what you've said about trying to maintain the integrity of the structure that we're working on now is really important. And we are doing what we can. I know a couple of people have asked me what we're doing as far as windows and the interior, like there's wallpaper. I think last count, there's about 8 layers of wallpaper in most rooms. And some beautiful handcrafted molding and baseboards, just some beautiful things, and actually original flooring in several of the rooms downstairs. And we are doing everything that we can to restore those. We're finding that there has been, while the roof was still leaking, there was considerable water damage. And a lot of those old features were destroyed beyond being able to salvage them. So we are having to replace some of those features, but we are trying to make them as authentic to the period and to the materials as we are able to do. Some things just couldn't be saved. There was so much leakage in some of the upstairs rooms that entire walls were just destroyed. And not much that we could do about that. So, removing the wallpaper, which I may write a book about that someday, because I would go to bed at night dreaming about stripping wallpaper and it not coming off. They used some incredible glue on the base layer that actually went up against the plaster walls that we have not been able to find a method of removing without the plaster coming off as well. So even though we had stripped in one room, we had stripped off 7 layers of wallpaper, when we got to that bottom layer, getting it off actually destroyed the plaster that we were trying to preserve. So we're running into some, some challenges in those areas that we didn't expect to, and that we thought we would be able to find a workaround and haven't been able to do. So, so in some cases, we won't be able to restore the original materials, but we are doing that wherever we can. James, when you show the slides, maybe you can point out some of the damaged window framing and window sills and things that we haven't been able to salvage. There's a lot of lead paint too. There was somebody at some point went in there with the wrong kind of paint, with enamel paint, and painted over the oil-based paints. And the further we got into the oil-based paints, removing those, there's just a whole lot of lead in the house that we had to be really careful about removing. So in some cases, it was easier to, or not easier, but the only real solution, because of the combination of paint, water damage, and the age of the wood, we had to just take the window frames out. But James, do you want to show some of those pictures, or?
Yeah, I'll kick it off with, and basically how I ran the slideshows you're about to see is that I try to get the more historic photos and then kind of build a timeline into where we are right now. Let me know if my slides don't start coming across. But just a little bit about us. This is Deborah and myself. This is a picture of me actually out on the Okeanos Explorer, which is the ship I mainly work with at NOAA. And just a quick note that I really don't have any connection to NOAA fisheries. We're really in the business of ocean research in my department. And our mission is to go into places of the ocean that have not been explored before. And so we go to the Marianas Trench. We go everywhere in the ocean. It's robotic in nature. I like to describe it to people as Jacques Cousteau if all the divers were robots. We don't actually employ divers of that genre anymore because of some of the hazards and dangers and long-term effects of deep-sea diving on the researchers. All of our research is conducted by robots currently. My job is to get the science on the ocean floor from the robots to the scientists and to the general public in real time, which means I stream video and data live from the ocean floor from our robots back to both scientists and the general public. And for the scientists, I have got to get it from the ocean floor back to the scientists at the research institutions in under a second. So it's a huge technical challenge. I bounce it off a satellite, run it through, a bunch of networks to get it to them so they can actually conduct their scientific research from shore in real time with the robots. And but one of my big focus points is that because our research is paid for by U.S. taxpayers, that they have access to it just as much as the research scientists. Their delay may be slightly greater because they don't have the need for, sub 1 second transmission times, but it actually is almost identical as far as what they view. And we have a huge audience. I run viewership that would rival a small cable station for our research expeditions. I'll have almost 500,000 unique viewers simultaneous. We've done over 11 million unique views to our live streams. So it is actually like a small cable station for the general public. But I feel like it's very important that the people who pay for our research as U.S. citizens, they have the exposure to what they're paying for. And so they can see where their taxpayer dollars are going. And it really is a very open research program to the public. And I had briefly discussed giving a presentation on this with Jackie, and I'd be happy to do so. It's really a fascinating area of research. It's exciting, video streams. The ocean life is both beautiful, sometimes terrifying. There is so much going on, and it's so dynamic. It's really a very exciting video stream activity. So just a little bit of a teaser for a future presentation, possibly, to put out there for people. But back to the Broadway Inn. What year does the property date back to is an interesting question. We believe the house was built in the 1870s. We have the deeds that track back to 1897, but that isn't the original deed. That was a transfer of property. And it wasn't original. This is actually the first deed that we have is dated 1897, and it's a transfer of ownership. The Longfellows owned a lot of the property right in our block area. And there's some historical records reference to our property that go back about 10 to 15 years. So we're guessing in the early 1880s, the house was actually developed. It was probably built in sections as we delve into the construction of it. It was probably built as the main house, and then 2 back units were probably added on later from our estimation. We've seen dates applied of 1888. We've seen 1870 references to it. We would guess about 1879 was probably 1876 was the original construction date for the main house. As an inn, it dates back to the early 1900s. This is a postcard from 1922 when it was in full operation as an inn. And probably around 1910, 1911, we think it was turned into an inn. The back unit behind the main house was probably added in early circa 1900 based on construction technique and dating. This is one of my favorite photos of the inn. The trees are in the front, so much of this is still actually in place on the front porch. The original trim, so much of the original house is actually identical to when it was originally an inn back in these days. This is 1924, slightly different view from the quarter view. This is a great one for the cars and the people standing outside. I love this photo as well.
Yeah, this is my favorite photo because there's actually a guest leaving with his cases, walking back out to his car. I love that.
It is a great shot, and really gives a good view of the work areas. The back, what we call the carriage house, which is the very back unit, has changed and moved somewhat, but so much of the structure of the front house is really identical to where we are right now. The back units have changed fairly drastically over time, and so we feel like they're probably added on structures, but the main house really very much identical to where we are right now. 1926, fairly similar even still, just a couple of years later, starting to show a little bit of transition and a little bit of change. Yeah, we actually already discussed a little bit about how the Broadway and us came to be connected. It wasn't originally our plan to actually buy something with a commercial outlet. We kind of developed that plan when the property became available based on our rental experiences here. And just a note about, as far as a side business, we were very pleasantly surprised at how productive, profitable, and low startup cost for us running a rental unit was. There are definitely challenges. We rebuilt our rental unit from what was a college room for our son when he went to University of Colorado. And we really tore it down to the studs when we designed it as a rental, because we knew that the design would be inherently needed to be functional to the rental purpose. And, this is one of my tips is that, and you'll see this as we develop the inn concept as a self-catering inn. Guest flow is so very important to this concept that they always feel like, they're welcome, they're expected, and that they have a place. And that is a lot of times accomplished through personal interaction with guest services at a bed and breakfast. But under our design is actually built into the functionality of the design right up to when they're approaching the property. We design very specific guest workflows so that they know where they're going, they know where to park, they know how to access the inn inherently. The comfort level has to be very high for our guests because we tend not to have a lot of personal interaction when they check in. We have a self-check-in modality that leads them to their room with comfort and welcomeness and signage. And, a lot of this is a business model that we've developed, around our rental here that affords us the ability to have guests, a lot of times who have privacy desires of their own and wish to approach the inn on something of an individual basis. We designed a walkway that literally took people from their parking spot, and it's a great distance, probably 150 yards to their front door. There are no path options for them as they approach the unit. They literally have a designated parking spot that's clearly marked for them. They get out of their car, they step onto a walkway that is a clearly designed pathway to get them into their unit. So they don't have to wonder, regardless of when they get there. It could be 2 a.m., it could be, 3 in the afternoon, but they don't have any questions about that. They're welcome, expected, and have a clear direction to their unit. And that's, born out of our experiences traveling, how many times we've wandered around looking for the guest desk, trying to find our parking spot. The stress that goes along with that can be a detrimental experience before the guest even gets to their room. And, there's a lot of design and functionality that goes into that you guys will see as, our inn concept really starts to take shape. Let's go to another slide. This is probably a picture you guys have seen. This is an artist rendering of the inn, probably at looking its best in recent history in 2006. This is an actual photo of it. It had just been remodeled in 2006. It looks great. Very polished, very approachable, very historic. And
but let's mention too that a lot of the remodeling that was done during those years to the inn was very cosmetic. They
very much so.
They were putting paint on top of things that actually needed to be replaced or repaired. And that was one of the problems was, a lot of things looked okay on the surface, but then when you started really paying attention to it, it's like, oh, that wood is starting to rot underneath there, or it's become detached from, its moorings or whatever the case may be. But a lot of those repairs that were done during that time period were very cosmetic.
Very much so. And that combined with the time that it was vacant. It was vacant for, roughly a decade or approaching that. And the humidity and mold and deterioration because of that was actually, fairly extensive. Here's a shot of the kitchen ceiling when we first got in. I spent months on mold remediation, just taking apart walls, I have actually a commercial mold treater, sprayer, fogger that I had purchased because I probably fogged the house a dozen times, overall, and specific sections, even where I take a wall down. We'd fog, we'd remediate, ongoing process of paint stripping, like Deborah said. Just every windowsill of the dozens of windows, the rot, the paint, flaking, the mold. We did, this is another slide. We did get a bit of a break on that. The windows were fairly new and were vinyl double panes. So that was a bit of a break. This is a lead into the other aspect of it is that the rooms were not configured as we're going to need them for our guests. There are some baselines that we, are such imperatives for us. Every room must have its own bathroom. Every room must be self-contained. There's a quality standard for our guests that is part of the Broadway Inn experience. People come, I think, to the Broadway Inn and will be coming to the Broadway with an expectation of a Victorian house experience. And that's, what we are focused on delivering to them. An authentic Victorian stay is one of our focus points. And, this is actually what is going to be one of our common areas, which is what we're titling the chart room, and used to be the reception area. I like to show this one just because it looked pretty good at first glance, but then you look at the plumbing shot and it's like, there's a lot of work to do there on the plumbing. None of that can go forward for us. I literally had to take apart all of the plumbing, and as probably a lot of you guys know, routing plumbing inside of a house that was designed, this long ago is a real challenge. The plumbing wasn't done like this in the middle of an open room because people were lazy. The plumbing was done like this because it's an incredibly difficult enterprise to reroute plumbing for new bathrooms through a structure this old. And, and a lot of this is based on techniques, like I said, that I learned from my father as he rebuilt his 1911 farmhouse. I watched him plumb. I watched, how he attacked the issues like this, and applied some of those techniques here, picked up a few new ones along the way. One of the things that we're very focused on as well is environmental controls that are unique to each room. People will have their own heating, cooling systems in each room, mostly powered by a highly efficient air source heat pump, but with backup heating sources that are likely to be fireplaces. Not wood burning. The safety issue around wood burning fireplaces in a structure this old are too much to really get around. So they'll be either electric or gas, but in each individual room as supplemental heating. And actually, this is a little bit based on a model that's deployed at the Bluebird Motel in Machias. Each room is actually powered by an air source heat pump for heating and cooling with a backup heating source. Theirs at the Bluebird is actually an oil furnace for backup heating, whereas ours will be the fireplace unit. But it's a similar concept to what they've deployed, and actually it's a very efficient one. I come from a renewable energy background, and air source heat pumps are very state-of-the-art and incredibly efficient and cost-effective. And once again, to the side business aspect, one of our principles is that the rooms are cost-based for revenue on a principle that we don't have to rent the rooms in order to meet our cost-based models for revenue. We develop them so that if a room is unoccupied, it is not a resource drain. We take the room down to a temperature in the winter where it's not a large cost to keep it heated, but where it can be brought up to occupancy in an hour or two. So we'll take it down to say 45 degrees in the winter when it's unoccupied. And then when we have a booking, we'll bring it up to the 65, 70 degree temperature for occupancy immediately. It can be done remotely. It can be done in-house. But there isn't a huge cost carry factor for an unoccupied room. We base our revenue structure on occupancy, and that the cost to carry an unoccupied room is very low, and we incur costs as they are occupied. And that's when also our revenue kicks in. That's been a very successful model for us here. And with actually similar weather dynamics, we actually have a bit more severe weather swings here. And so we have experience with, it's not really mothballing a room, but an unoccupied room can be brought up very quickly to a revenue position. But when it's unoccupied, it's not a revenue drain. Our cleaning costs, go ahead, Deborah, go ahead.
So one of the things that we do here is the unit that we have in Colorado is it's a cottage, and it has a full kitchen and a living room, sleeping area, and a bathroom. And it's heated by a gas fireplace, it's kind of an open concept space. So it's very efficient for heating. But when no one's there, we put the heat to to where we need to keep it from the pipes from freezing. And there's nothing else going on in that space. So it's been cleaned and it's been readied. And all we have to do is go over there and put finishing touches on it for that particular guest and get the heat back up. Or, if it's summer, make sure the windows are open and whatever we need to do to make it comfortable for that person. And some of the things that it's kind of been our model for how we see the in-working has been based largely on trial and error here in Colorado, because we actually used to do a lot of things that turned out not to be the things that guests wanted. So one of the things that we would do is, if somebody had booked the cottage, would be send them a grocery list, because because we didn't cook meals for them and they had their own full kitchen over there. We still wanted to leave them something so that if they got in very late, they didn't have to get up and run out for breakfast, or, if they got in very early, that they could just relax and not have to immediately go out for a grocery store run or to find a restaurant in a town that they're not familiar with. So I would send a grocery list and just ask them, some basic things. Would you like eggs? Would you like milk or cream? Would you like a dairy alternative? Would you like pastries or cereal? Just you send them a list, and then they could check off what they wanted. We would keep the kitchen over there pretty well stocked anyway with anything that you might need for cooking, olive oil, salt, pepper, spices, coffee, tea, sugar alternatives. But the guests could fill out this little list, and then before they came, I would go to the grocery store and, prepare this beautiful basket and leave it for them on the table. Well, most people filled out the list, and we would leave the basket for them, and almost nobody used any of the things that we left for them. And, we would even ask them if they had like brands that they were particularly fond of. I would try to find that brand of yogurt or that brand of milk or coffee or whatever. And people would leave us nice notes, but nobody used, I think like every now and then somebody would boil an egg or use some creamer for their coffee, but most of it just went unused. So we were spending an average of about $25 per guest to create this basket for them that was going unused. So we stopped doing it, and instead I left a treat, just a treat. Didn't ask them if they wanted a treat. I left them a treat. It could have been something, that the local baker had prepared, some cupcakes or a chocolate bar from the local candy maker or something like that. People loved it. We would get notes and letters and thank you cards, and people just loved that little touch. But they didn't want the stress of filling out a grocery list or, feeling compelled to use the things that we had actually left for them. So that was a lot of wasted money because, most of the time it wasn't even grocery choices that we would have personally made for ourselves. So a lot of that food just got thrown out. So that was like a trial and error sort of thing. We also learned that people did not want to be met in the driveway when they arrived. They wanted to just arrive. They had their door code. We have a keypad on the door. They had their door code. They had their instructions for how to use the convection oven or whatever it might be. They just wanted to be here in the wilderness, under the trees, and have their space where they could sit outside and watch the deer and the foxes and the raccoons and the elk and the bears go, traipsing by. They didn't want to be bothered. They didn't want anything, anybody greeting them or anybody impinging on their sense of solitude and peacefulness. That was, that was the reason that they booked our place and not somebody else's, is because they wanted that experience. So we learned really quickly, stay out of their way and let them have that experience. And we created a setting here where even when people or guests are walking to their front door, they don't have to see us. They don't have to see, they can see our house because it's not that far away, but they had the sense that they were on their own. And that was hugely successful. And it's what we like when we travel. We don't want to have to be fussed over. And we like knowing that if there's something that goes wrong, the heat won't work, the refrigerator seems to be on the blink, that there's somebody that we can call. Otherwise, we just want to be left to have our experience. And that seems to be maybe related to the age demographic that we attracted here and that we assume that we will be attracting at the end, mature adults. They know how to take care of themselves. They don't need you to stand over them and constantly be like, can I help you? Is there something I can do for you? That just is annoying. It's annoying to me. It's annoying to James. It's annoying to a lot of the people that we know. So we want people to feel like they're here. They've got everything they need. There's help at hand should they require it. Otherwise, they can just start having their experience, their vacation immediately. So that was a trial and error sort of thing that was a good lesson for us. And I would say it's something that, if anybody's looking, if anyone's got ideas about how to start a side business of their own, that it's really something to pay attention to. Make sure that you're offering what's being looked for. Find out what people are looking for and supply that service. And even if if you're doing something like, say you're making handmade soaps. Well, a lot of people make handmade soaps. You can go into a lot of the shops in the Chias and find that. But find the thing that they're not doing. Is that person growing their own herbs at their house that they're incorporating into their soap? Are they using only organic ingredients? Are they using scents that maybe, everyone's making lavender soap? Well, okay, so maybe you need to have a lavender soap because that's popular. But maybe you want something that's, it's a little offbeat, maybe cardamom or I don't know, cloves and cinnamon, soaps that aren't as commonly found. So whatever your niche is and whatever business that you're hoping to establish, do your research, find out if it's marketable in your area. And then if it is, find out what kind of a spin you can put on it that will serve a particular demographic and make your business a viable one. So that's the niche that we're hoping to attract. We know that there are other great places in town where people can go and stay and they can walk into a breakfast room and have that experience. That's not the experience they'll get at the inn. They'll have breakfast, but it will be laid out for them so that they can pick and choose, for themselves and fill a tray and bring it to the beautiful table that's in their room. And they can sit there by the fireplace or they can look out the window. Not at the brick building next door, but they can look out the window and it's still, hopefully they will be able to look down and look at the garden that I hope to establish this spring. So.
Excellent points, Deborah. We would spend, for a 2-night stay, we would spend roughly 10% of our gross on that breakfast setup currently that almost nobody was accessing, plus several hours of time. So it wasn't efficient. It wasn't it wasn't that valued by the guests for the time money quotient. And we found that something much simpler was actually more appreciated and highly valued than something that was a higher cost and actually took us a couple hours to prep. And this will answer some of the questions that I see popping up here. One of them, so it'd be renting without being there yourself. We have a rule at our rental here that somebody always has to be on site when the property is rented, and it's for a variety of reasons. While they may not see us, there is somebody available always to respond to issues, requests, or just general questions, and we are available but not visible is kind of our concept. And this will apply to this property as well. There will always, when the property is occupied, there will be somebody on site that is available to answer questions. If it's not us, it will be a site manager. It's when we started doing this, we were told that roughly 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 guests will have an issue. And actually our numbers follow that pretty closely, that there about 1 in 10 people are going to have something that needs to be addressed on a personal level, on whatever that may be. And it went, a wide range. And, we've developed processes over time to minimize that. And we have developed a pattern like we don't do single night rentals. Almost every problem we've had with guests misbehaving, making too much noise, drunk and disorderly, have occurred when they were single night stays, almost exclusively. So we don't do single night stays, minimum 2-night stay. And, we found that a lot of people who were looking for single night stays were also there for a party or there for, whatever reason. And so as long as we... Go ahead.
Because I'm not sure you're going to mention this, and I just want to make sure it's mentioned. We've also had some very unexpected challenges. So there is a keypad on the door, which we will also have on the guest room doors at the inn. And we would give the guests, once we had confirmed their confirmation, usually within 24 hours of them arriving, we would send them a map, the keypad, the code to the keypad, and the other information they needed. But then we had some things happen. We had guests who refused to check out. We had guests who just pretended that they didn't know when they were supposed to leave, or that other guests were checking in, that we had to actually threaten to call, the authorities, or put locks on their tires because they were like, no, we really like it. We're going to stay a few more days. Not understanding that there were other people checking in, or not even caring that there were other people checking in. So that was a big eye opener for us. It never occurred to us something like that would happen. And then we had people actually check in because they have the keypad, check in a day before they were supposed to, when we hadn't even finished servicing the room, and once when the previous guests hadn't even finished checking out. So we learned, we learned the hard way. You don't give them the keypad code until an hour before they check in, and you make it clear the moment that they check in, but by sending an email or other message, a reminder that checkout time is at this time on this day, and that if they find that they're having any difficulties, they need to let us know within 12 hours before that time. Because things can happen. Maybe your car broke down. Maybe there's a sudden snowstorm and the road that actually leads from this town down the mountain through the canyon into the next town is closed, and you can't go anywhere. So there are things that happen, and we developed systems to accommodate those rare occurrences. But what we didn't anticipate was people just misbehaving. So that was a big eye opener. Yeah,
excellent points, Deborah. And just a couple of points to answer and questions that brought up about banks securing the property that have been, vacated. And Bob Zaney actually put a really good response in here in that, the banks do have an interest in maintaining the viability of the property for resale. But while, there had been some property preparation for being vacancy, Bob actually put a very accurate comment in here in that banks are they're not in the property maintenance business. And, they can barely be brought to the tax payment table in a lot of cases on a foreclosed property. I left this picture up here of the side door, which is now a window. When we purchased the property, that board had been letting water in, I would say, for the better part of 5 years. The floor was completely rotted. The joist underneath completely rotted away. And, it obviously had not been secured. There was a lot of that kind of thing where just a little bit of work would have probably, prevented a lot of damage. And this is, not particular to any bank. They are not in that line of business. That's not what they do. And they're in the business of lending and, savings and not securing property. So, a lot of times there will be federal insurance behind a mortgage. That means it's not really even in their best interest to invest a lot in a property to make it ready for resale. It's just one of those things that it's just not their genre. This is one of the bathrooms that we're redoing right now as well. You can see, the paint flaking. There's mold on the walls. This isn't set up really for a good guest experience. This is a bathroom that was right in the middle of the guest room. They had actually noticed that guests will expect a bathroom with their room, but I guess they didn't realize the guests don't expect a bathroom in their room. This is actually literally in the middle of the guest room. And that was part of the plumbing.
There's a toilet on the other side of the shower that's just right there next to where the bed would go. And I just wanted to mention too about these photos. These were the photos that we took before we cleaned up. There was a huge amount of debris left all throughout the house. So we took these photos before we actually cleaned up. So that's what you're seeing in a lot of these rooms is just trash and paper. And we think based on dishes and food supplies and things like that, that there may have been some people who were occupying the house who were not supposed to have been occupying the house, because there was a lot of, it looked like somebody had been interrupted and had just like fled the building. And every room was like that.
Yeah. This is the house shortly after we purchased it. Our first project was the roof. We hired a local roofer. We're very focused on hiring locals for our projects. I am doing what I can. When we hire people, we hire local people. We hire Machias tradesmen. We bought our shingles from the closest supplier to Machias that we could get them sustainably sourced from. Our electrician is Machias electrician. Our roofer is Machias roofer. Our plumber, our siding, installer, all local people every time. It's something that is at the core of what we do. Plus, they've been really great. Just can't say enough about some of the local skills and talents that we've come up against. And it's a pleasure to hire, the local craftsmen. I guess this is probably about 2/3 of the way through the initial roofing project on the main house. And, this was kind of our starting point to seal it up. Someone asked a question about asbestos during our remodel. We have not had any positive tests for asbestos yet. And it's one of the breaks we really felt like we got around this. I've counted probably 4 to 6 layers of flooring in some rooms that date back to the original floors. And none of them have come up positive for asbestos. And so that's been a real plus as far as a remediation. The lead paint was a challenge to remediate, and but was not extensive, and so that wasn't a major issue. Asbestos would have been severely problematic for remediation, and we really felt like we caught a break as far as that not being in any of the building materials thus far. Kind of our concept with the siding. Oh, this is a nice room. This is Deborah's wallpaper removing project and the rebuilding process of one of the bathrooms. There's just so much wallpaper to remove. We've got a steamer, and Deborah's been scraping, and progress is being made. We have a very specific vision for the rooms for our guests, and this is the tile coming up in one of the bathrooms. Is I spent more time than I care to admit chiseling up tile, and you can see actually the old floorboards to the left in the picture that date back to the original building of the house. You go down enough layers, the originals are still there in a lot of places. This is as we're starting to make progress, right? New tile going in, new showers going in. We're really making progress. This is the beginning of our cedar shingling project. If you drive by, you can see it. I had the shingle guy come out, and we had a lot of discussions about how to apply them. It wasn't really an option to remove the old siding. You have to make a call as far as how much are you going to tear out and when you're going to stop. There's so many layers, and you've got to make a decision about what's good for the house. We did not want to rebuild the house from scratch. And structurally, we could get insulation and structure strength because of the way we did these shingles. They actually form a wall unto themselves on the exterior. If you walk up, it is amazing, just if you put your hand on the shingles, how solid it begins to really make the structure. I really owe a lot of this to George Dow, who was our shingle consultant and supplier. Third generation shingle manufacturer in Maine, came out with his son, who will be the fourth generation, and really got involved with us in the project and really gave us some direction. You'll notice that we're actually doing the interior trim after the exterior shingles. And that's because actually they're going to be capped. We're going to employ a computer design process to cut trim so that it will cap over the existing trim and seal up with the shingles. And we've had a couple of architectural renovation specialists come out, and we've talked to them about the trim in a process so that we can get an authentic looking trim that will actually seal off and, not require that we destroy as we go forward. You can tear off down to the base structure if you want it. You have to make a call at some point as far as how far down you're going to go and when you're going to start rebuilding. As we're going forward, we're really starting to employ a more architect kind of viewpoint now that we've got the joist redone, the roof is in. The structural components have been resolved to a large extent at this point. Our floors are leveled, our plumbing's coming online, HVAC's going in. So a lot of the structural aspects have been resolved now. We're starting to move into more of a design phase for the rooms, for the interior cuts, and how the remodeling is actually going to take place now that the real baseline issues have been resolved for us. And to be honest, we wanted to get in there and work with our own hands to get a feel for what the house wanted and what direction the house provided for what was an optimal scenario. One of our focus points is that it be an artistic endeavor as well that will contribute to the Machias community. We plan on artist weekends where we bring in both artists that we know and artists that are regional to the area, that are painters, sculptors, potters, writers, poets, singers, just cooks, chefs, you know, from to hold artist retreats where the guests can actually engage the art and the artists. This won't be a yeah, Deborah, go ahead for sure.
So one of the things that we envision is for instance, I see someone is just asked how many guest rooms do we plan to have, and this is kind of tied into it. So right now there are 6 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, and what we are doing on the upstairs level is there's 1 bedroom, which you'll see on the far left of James's schematic that he just put up there. The bedroom and the bathroom, that is 1 single unit. Then what we've done is there are 2 extremely tiny bedrooms. And by tiny, I mean, you could fit a single bed in there and maybe a small chest of drawers, and that's it. So what we've decided to do is turn those 2 small bedrooms into sitting rooms that will adjoin the large bedrooms and the bathrooms. So we'll have 2 suites. One will be larger than the other, with a bedroom, a sitting room, and a bathroom. And then the 2 suites, and then the 1 single bedroom with the bathroom. Further down the road, we hope to develop the carriage house as well, so that we're turning some of the carriage house into guest space. Or, you know, we haven't really decided yet. I think it's going to be one of those situations where we need to live with it for a while before we make a final call. But we may maintain the downstairs area as our own private living space, which it is now, and develop the carriage house for guests. Or we may develop the carriage house to be our living space, and then also use the downstairs of the inn as a rental space. There is a large room on the very front of the house that faces the porch that we call the chart room, because it's got 2 entrances. It has an entrance into the living room and the main living space, and it has an entrance right off of the front entranceway. And we feel like that room can be, if we have guests who are there for a business retreat, that room can be separated for them very easily by just closing the door. And then it's their private workspace or business space. And our plan is to line it with bookshelves, and, you know, to have an active fireplace and seating areas, and possibly a table where people could have shared meetings. So that will be kind of a flex space. Most guests won't need that. Business guests will probably require something like that. So that's one of our plans. But the other thing that we want to do is to have maybe an artist in residence. So for instance, an actor who is there occupying one of the suites. The other 2 guest rooms will be available for guests who would like to have more interaction with that person. But then we will have that person host events that are open to the community. So perhaps that person is doing a reading or a workshop, and community people can participate in that. And I don't know how that will look. Maybe they buy a ticket and they get to participate in the workshop and then have lunch with the actor. Or if it's an artist, there's a workshop that takes place on the premises, but then maybe the artist, we will invite community people to do a walk through town with that artist, and to set up easels someplace in town to do an impromptu, class, things of that nature. And then, talks in the evening that would also be open to the community. And the guests, of course, would have preference. If there was, only seating for 30 people, then the people who were also guests at that time would have preferential treatment, as far as they would be guaranteed a spot. But then those other spots would be open to the community, so that everybody can participate. And, we can make it something that is also beneficial to the people of Machias.
Exactly right. We'd like to glass in the carport area for a meeting area. And it may not be 4 season. It's tough. It'll be tough to heat it in the winter. But during our periods of maximum occupancy, we'd like to be able to have weddings in there. We'd like to have, readings in there. nothing would make us happier than to see, some of the great families of Machias be able to host a wedding in our property, and that would please us a great deal. That some of the people could access our facility, and have events that matter to them. This is an artistic endeavor for Deborah and I just as much as it is a business endeavor, and there's a lot of focus on this. This is not an add-on. Kind of the French salon model of artistic engagement is really our model.
We have experience with that. One of my past positions for over a decade, I was the poetry editor at a national poetry journal called Many Mountains Moving, and we hosted monthly soirees where we would feature, W.S. Merwin was once a guest. We would feature a famous poet that we had published in the journal who was in the area, and we had the advantage of the University of Colorado at Boulder is such a large facility that there were often very famous people who would pass through and who were willing to be hosted at our soirees. And we had huge community turnouts. People would just come, and maybe we would serve coffee and tea, and people would be able to chat with that person and ask questions. Maybe that person would do a short reading. They were not only wonderful things to participate in, but they seemed to be, very enriching as far as what we were able to offer to the people in the community who couldn't access those big, those big dinners or the champagne reception that was being hosted for select members of the community. This was a more intimate gathering where people could actually have conversations with that person and not just listen to them on a stage. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do. And part of that is we'll be doing a podcast from the inn, probably on a weekly basis. That's something that we're going to kick off as soon as we get back there this spring. We're going to start out with people who are in the area, who would be interesting guests. No pressure, Gail, but your name's on my list. And that we can just start out that way. We can bring some attention to the inn. We can bring some attention to the community and link these things together. These people are accessible.
Yeah, excellent points, Deborah. I'm just finish typing a message. I see a question about the Cobb's Cook Institute in Lubeck. I've heard of them, but haven't had a great deal of information. It's something that we'll be definitely following up on. And I just lost my train of thought. But
podcasts and
podcasts. Thank you. One of the real strengths of Machias is that its internet connectivity is really incredibly good. Machias Savings Bank is bringing fiber to town, and it wasn't bad to start with. The benefits of that, especially in a post-COVID environment, are hard to overstate. And is really, I'm super focused on connectivity of the inn and providing a place where people have continuous connectivity to their jobs and contacts. It's a huge portion of this. I think is often overlooked how important it is to guests. And literally, not only will there be a primary internet access, there will be satellite backup capacity. And part of that's because of my work, and I'll be working out of the house fairly often, but guests need connectivity. It's one of the top three things that guests are looking for in a room is they need to maintain contact. It provides benefits as far as entertainment systems and some other things as well, but it was important pre-COVID. Post-COVID, it's really tied into a guest appreciation of the property in a huge way. And to say that there will not ever be a moment where they're unconnected probably won't be off the mark. Not only will there be primary, we'll have a backup satellite system in place in addition to backup power systems. We're done at total. This time went by so fast. You guys, we got to take some questions. This has gone. I feel like we've been talking for like 10 minutes, but I want to make sure you guys get your questions answered too, because I think we've talked long enough, Deborah.
Yeah, I do.
Are there some questions we can answer for you guys about us, about the property, about our plans? We're really very open about it.
This is Jackie.
Yes, Jackie.
I heard you have two famous guests that are supposedly living at your place.
We do. So don't know how people feel about ghosts, but I will share with you the experiences that we've had since we've been in the inn. We don't know how to explain them, but I will say that we lived when we first moved to Colorado. We rented. We weren't sure we wanted to stay in this area, so we leased a house for 2 years. That turned out to be one of the most haunted places that I've ever heard about. And we just every day we wondered like if we were imagining things because of the things that happened. So I'll say that. So I'll say that we are perhaps people who are open to this sort of experience. But the things that have happened in the inn have just been very, very, very strange. Now we've seen a cat running around in the upstairs of the house that is not one of our two cats. And the interesting thing is that our cats also see this cat, and they react when the cat appears. They both immediately react. They move, their ears go up, they stop what they're doing, they move toward it, and then the cat disappears through a wall. So there's a cat. There is a ghost cat in the upstairs of the inn. The thing that we've experienced with a person, we've never seen a person or anything like that, but the first time it happened, we were in the kitchen, which, as you saw, is an absolute wreck. It was freezing cold. We had the windows were closed, the doors were closed. There, it was very, very, very cold. And we were both in the kitchen, and we were bent over, like scraping things up off the floor. And we heard, as plain as day, a woman said, "Good morning." And we stopped what we were doing and we looked around because we thought somebody must have come in a door that we're not aware of yet. And, maybe a neighbor or something has walked in. Well, there was no one there. There was absolutely no one in that room except for the two of us. And we both heard it as plain as day. And then nothing happened for months and months and months and months. And then I would say it was probably about a month before we came back to Colorado, the woman spoke to us again. And she just said, "Hello." And that's all she said. She seems to hang out in the kitchen. We don't know why. We don't know whether she's someone who lived in the house before. Maybe the kitchen was a special place to her and she still has some sort of tie to it. Maybe we're hearing an echo of something that's just trapped there in the house or left over in the house. We don't know what it is, but the voice has been a woman's voice, and it has been as clear as a bell. Once "good morning" and once "hello." I don't know.
There was right before we left this last time to come back to Colorado for the winter, we were finishing up, packing up, and getting our remodel shaped up a little bit. The day before we left, I was walking through the kitchen, and the woman's voice said to me, "Don't leave." And it was a little bit touching. And I've worked in government research and science for 20 years. I am not someone who is given to things of fancy often, but there is a spirit to the house, and it was part of our initial engagement with it. When we first bought the house, I went out there and stayed for a couple of days just to get a feel for it. Literally, we hadn't done anything. I went in and spent a night there. I heard footsteps in the hallway that I don't know who or what they were, that scared me so much. I sat there and put my feet up against the door to hold the door closed because I was concerned somebody's not. I wasn't sure which was more terrifying, that somebody was in the house or that there was a ghost in the house. I was equally afraid of both things because we had never been in the house before and definitely hadn't spent a night. And I didn't know if there were people, vagrants living in the house. But it's a house with a personality unto itself, no question. And we are constantly surprised with what we find and are engaged with. It's you know, is there a secret room? Yes, there is a secret room.
Yes, there was a secret room. Yes.
You know, and it literally took we were there 3 months before we actually came across it. There is an arch in the basement that is confounding in its construction and placement. It is literally a brick archway in the basement with nothing around it. You know, we have not been in the attic of the carriage house, even as of this point in time. We have not even been up there. So there's still some exploring yet to do. We're very excited about it. I can't wait to talk to Marcus at UMM about the ghosts. That's a great tip from Gail. Yes. Appreciate that. Bob, I can't wait to talk to you about some of the science going on in the area. I dig the work you've done on, buoy data sensors. That's awesome. We'll talk about that later. So I know we're running out of time. Can we actually, I see a link on the backup satellite system. That's Starlink based. Actually, we already have our order in. I'll see if I can post a link here real quick for you guys. And what that is it's low orbit satellites that provide internet access. That when the system is finished, will be, even if you're at sea, wherever you are, you will have internet access. I'll put a quick link into Starlink here.
We actually have the time to 1 o'clock. The class is scheduled to go to 12:30. People are welcome to stay on if you're fascinated, and Deb and James are willing to stay on.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for posting that.
Oh, no problem at all. It's actually something that I'm heavily involved in with my work at NOAA. And, as you can imagine, bandwidth connectivity from ships at sea goes at a premium. One of my biggest cost factors is my satellite bill. It's astoundingly huge, 6 figures large every month. And Starlink is actually a solution to a lot of the issues we face with on-sea, on-ship communications and data transmission and video transmission. So it's a game changer, but it's also a game changer for people in rural areas. And it's really changing a lot of the work dynamics in a post-COVID environment here in the United States. And it's going to really come at a great time, I think, for people who can work remotely. And that's one of the things the inn figures into as well. I have an office. I never go there. I'll go 6 months without going into my office. Obviously, it doesn't apply to when I'm at sea, but, it's so many people are gravitating to positions where they can work from anywhere now. And to be honest, the design of the house changed over the summer for us. We, because of the COVID change in dynamics for a lot of guest houses and hotels, there is a minimization of common areas. And we actually took some common areas and enlarged some suites because that's where guests are going to be staying, and common areas will be used less so on an individual basis. We still have common areas, but we reconfigured them to optimize them in a post-COVID design layout. When do we anticipate? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just saw a question about when do we anticipate opening. We slowed down a little bit because of COVID, and we wanted to reanalyze our business model a little bit to see how it changed coming out of COVID. And so we did actually step back and slow down a bit and focused on exterior. We're hoping to have a room open this summer. Our first room is actually nearing completion, and we don't want to rush it. So we'll probably do a soft opening on our first room. Deborah, do you think that's accurate this summer?
Yes, that depends on the people that we're counting on to show up to help us with something. Food. Well, everything's a little kind of wonky right now, but the front porch has to be. We have to finish the repairs on the front porch and have that open. And I really want to get the garden laid out. We're putting a hedgerow along the front of the house and moving walkways and stairs to the porch. And the porch needs some repairs before people step across it. So we need to finish those things. And if we can get, so we'll be back shortly in a few months.
before you open, fully open, will you have a grand opening to allow the town of Machias and the
Yes,
neighboring areas to come and view your beautiful house? And
we're hoping that we could that it's a summer that we can do that late summer so that we can have it on the lawn, and people will feel like they're comfortable coming, that they can social distance, but that they can still we can take small groups through at a time so that they can see the interior, and that people can mingle on the lawn and chat and ask questions and see what we're doing. Right now, we don't feel like we don't have anything to show people that's finished enough. We're hoping that we can do that by the end of this summer. If that doesn't happen, then we'll try again for spring and just try to get our heat up so that we can work through this coming winter and not have to come back to Colorado for that.
Yeah, it's less impressive to show people my new joist system in the basement. Yes. People, while a lot of work and effort went into it, it's less visually impressive to people normally.
There was a question earlier from Gail asking whether or not you'd approached any magazines to see if they'd be interested in following your project.
Well, I still work for Global Traveler magazine. I'm a feature writer and a monthly columnist, and I know that our situation there is the probably because it's a travel-based magazine, the advertising which determines the number of pages within a magazine is so devastated. All of our advertising comes from cruise lines and airlines and hotels. Nobody's advertising because nobody's open. So the magazine's about a third of the size that it usually is, and they were not willing to give up any space for any kind of a project like that. I have not approached some of the magazines that probably focus a little bit more on this type of thing, and it's actually a really good suggestion, and I may do that. I don't have any contacts at any of those magazines. I wonder if like one of the main magazines might be interested.
Yeah, Down East Maine. There's the main magazine,
Oh, I see some of this. Yeah.
We had put a small pitch together in hopes of attracting a TV home renovation show, and are actually, in hindsight, really glad that nobody picked up on it. Some of the reports we've heard back from some of the home renovation shows about the hurried work that's done and some of the constraints they're under, I don't think really would have matched what we're doing. But we had put it out there because we thought it would be, one of the things that really fascinated us was after we bought the inn, we heard from so many people that it was their life dream to open a Victorian bed and breakfast. It really hadn't been on our radar at all. But like even family members who were like, "You stole my dream of a Victorian bed and breakfast," and we're like, "I did not know it was. We will help you do yours after, but we didn't realize it was." There's a large segment of the population who have dreamed of owning and running a Victorian bed and breakfast, and we had no idea that so many people were intrigued by the concept. Yeah, we'll have to contact them after we're completed. But a lot of we're really excited about this coming season. And Deborah said, we've had a bit of the contractors like to go hunt during hunting season. It's hard to get a contractor. It's also hard to get a contractor during fishing season. There are a lot of seasons where the contractors are doing other things. It seems like, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, and we understand certainly, but it's yeah, excellent. Have we missed any questions? Can we touch on anything else for anybody here? We've got Deborah and I have had side businesses kind of throughout our life. I ran a small art gallery that produced furniture in St. Augustine. We built our own furniture and then sold them to the art gallery. So we have both some retail experience, we have some hospitality experience. Our son is actually kind of a hotel bigwig. for a very fancy hotel chain in Iceland currently. And so we have connections to hospitality that we draw from, even though our background isn't really necessarily there. We learn a lot along the way. I have a very scientific approach to like test casing, guest scenarios, and that's actually been productive for us. We're very focused on. Go ahead, Deborah.
I'm looking at the some of the questions, and
Yeah.
I see Mark is interested in seeing that archway in the basement.
Okay.
Mark, contact us. We have a Facebook page for the Broadway Inn, and there is a a chat system there. You can contact us directly through there. Give us, send us your phone number or your email address or something like that, so that when we get back there, we can get in touch with you and you can come see it.
Definitely. And listen, if anybody comes across someone who has information or photos, we would be very interested in engaging them. We have a lot to learn. And, we're definitely open to hearing people's experiences, whether they be from the 60s or 70s or 80s, whenever. There's really so much history there, and we'd love to hear people's stories and their experiences at the Broadway Inn. And we're just very open to all of that.
Yeah, a couple of people, Robin Pinio stopped by. Apparently she grew up in the house, and she stopped by shortly after we had first purchased it. It was still kind of a disaster inside, but she walked through with me and she showed me what the layout of the rooms had been when she was there, before the owners after her had put up walls in different places. And that was very informative. She told me that while her father was doing work on the house, he discovered that each one of the rooms upstairs was divided up into very small bedrooms, and that there was plumbing in the walls for each one of those rooms because each guest had their own private wash basin. And I guess that probably would have been at the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. So some people have stopped by and given us some really unique insight into what the house has been in the past.
Okay, if we can end this session if there are no more questions. You've done a wonderful job for us. This has been tremendous. I have a number of links from both James and Deborah. We'll send out an email to the class email, so you'll get all their links and materials. Anybody have any last questions for them?
When you come to visit us, go ahead. No, go ahead, Dylan.
Go ahead, Helen.
Yes, it's very popular now to start little documentaries about historic renovations, and if you will do it piece by piece with people who lived in the house and then make a little movie, it will be very good for Netflix. Or
that is
some
excellent suggestion.
Nice companies. Yes, you even don't know how people may be involved in this project, and your place will be so popular later that if you have someone who will start to do this documentary just piece by piece. It's very hard to do it once, but if you have someone, my internet is not good, maybe. Can you hear me?
Yes. Helen, that's an excellent suggestion. We're trying to document as much as we can, and we should tape more. That's an excellent suggestion. A lot of this has been a bit. We're not making the plans as we go on, but we're learning so much as we go along. We've been modifying our direction a little bit. That's a great suggestion. I like that a lot.
Well, right now, I just want to get back there and have a piece of pie from Helen's or the Bluebird. That's
our neighbors have brought by pies that I swear weigh in excess of 10 pounds. per pie.
Amazing.
I've never seen, you know, they're so welcoming. And, but yeah, the pies have been frequent and enormous both. But, you know, one of the things that we're really excited about is, you know, directing our guests towards local businesses like Helen's and the Bluebird. And, you know, the Suncoast Trail is such a huge feature for us, you know, and it really wasn't on our radar, but the trail is amazing. It's, you know, it's so exercise focused. It's a great view. There's so many strengths.
James, we have Gail to thank for the tip on the Sunrise Trail. Without Gail, I don't think we would have discovered it on our own for quite some time.
You know, you can't overstate the value of these things, you know, for activities for guests and for getting to know the area. Jasper Beach is phenomenal. I've never seen a beach like Jasper Beach in all the beaches I've seen.
When you come back this summer, we'll do some kayaking here in the Little Kennebec
Outstanding.
Bay.
Sounds great.
Awesome. But and once again, we just want to thank you guys for having us and you know, letting us talk a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, I just put in the chat that there is a local filmmaker, and Alan, and I always get his last name wrong.
Bansky?
Yes.
Right.
Who does films of the local area and with his students. You may be interested in a project in your house.
He teaches at UMM.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
thank
and
you.
they do good work.
Send us his name or contact information if you have it, and we'll get in touch with him. Definitely.
Will do.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. Those of you we haven't met in person yet, we really look forward to connecting with you when we get back. And thanks for listening to us.
Thank you. We're going to stop the recording now. If you guys want to stay on and chat with people, people can unmute and chat with you if you're willing to stay on.
Certainly. Of course. Of course.